Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. Let's get started and discuss topic number 1, denial of pro tem speaker. Post to Congress MP kicks up row. Let's understand this newspaper article in slight detail. According to the Constitution, the office of the Speaker becomes vacant immediately before the first meeting of the new Lok Sabha. When the Lok Sabha is dissolved, all the members of the then Lok Sabha, they also lose their membership. But the Speaker of that Lok Sabha remains in office and he vacates the office immediately before the first meeting of the new Lok Sabha. That is one of the privilege which is available to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. But then if you vacate your office immediately before the first sitting of the new Lok Sabha, then who will preside over Lok Sabha? Who will perform the duties of the Lok Sabha? That is somebody who is appointed by the President as Speaker pro tem. But listen to me carefully, this post of Speaker pro tem is not a constitutional post per se. This post is mentioned in the handbook of the Lok Sabha. What does that mean? Listen to me carefully. Article 99 of the Constitution, because now articles also have been asked in the examination, so you have to be clear which is this article which is in the news. Article 99 of the Constitution talks about oath of the newly elected MPs of the Lok Sabha. All these newly elected MPs of the Lok Sabha, they have to be administered oath. And that oath is mentioned where? That oath is mentioned in the third schedule of the Constitution. But who will administer this oath to the newly elected MPs? That responsibility is given to Speaker pro tem. So one job of the Speaker pro tem is to administer oath to these newly elected MPs. And the second role and responsibility of the Speaker pro tem is to preside over the election of the Speaker. Constitution says when the new Lok Sabha is convened, then this new Lok Sabha shall, as soon as may be, elect two of its MPs, one as the Speaker and the other as the Deputy Speaker. Clear? But these newly elected MPs, they cannot perform their duties unless and until they are administered oath. And for that, the responsibility is given to the Speaker pro tem. And the other responsibility of the Speaker pro tem is to preside over Lok Sabha when the Lok Sabha MPs will vote to elect the new Speaker. But what is the entire process? How is this Speaker pro tem appointed, identified? For that, listen to me carefully. Look at the flow. The government is formed. The Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, they are administered oath of office and secrecy by the President. Clear? When the government is formed, then we have a ministry called Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. In that we have a section called Legislative Section. It is this legislative section, what it does, it identifies. What does it identify? The senior most members. Who are these senior most members? Again, listen to me carefully. Some of these MPs who have got elected to the Lok Sabha, some of them are first-time MPs, some two-time MPs, three-time MPs, some of them are 8-time MPs, 7-time MPs. Who are the senior most MPs of this Lok Sabha? That list is prepared by the legislative section of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, and then this list is given to the Prime Minister, This list is also given to the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. And what does the Prime Minister and Minister of Parliamentary Affairs have to do now? They have to select Speaker Pro Tem and 3 other members. This is what is normally missed out in newspapers, so listen to me carefully. 3 other members. How? Now, first up, when the government is formed, the legislative wing of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, it prepares a list by identifying who are the senior most members of the Lok Sabha. Listen to me carefully. Prior to 17th Lok Sabha, this list would include tenure of both Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha. Sir, what does that mean? For example, I have been a member of the Lok Sabha for 3 terms, but a member of the Rajya Sabha for 5 terms. That means together my tenure is for 8 terms in the parliament. I was considered the senior most member of the parliament. Which means you identify the senior most members not in terms of age, but in terms of their tenure in the parliament. And for that, prior to 17th Lok Sabha, the tenure of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha would be included. But after the 17th Lok Sabha onwards, we only look at senior most members in terms of their tenure in Lok Sabha only. That means we will not look at the MPs who have been part of the Rajya Sabha as well previously, maybe for 4 terms, now are part of the Lok Sabha, so we will combine their term. No, we will only look at those senior most members of the Lok Sabha, for how many terms they have been the members of the Lok Sabha. And once those have been identified, then 3 other members who are also senior members, they are also identified. This list is sent to the Prime Minister, to the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, and ultimately we have to choose and select the Speaker Pro Tem and 3 other members. Who are these 3 other members? When the Speaker is elected, then the Speaker sometimes is not available to preside over Lok Sabha. In that case, who presides over the Lok Sabha? A panel of vice chairpersons. A panel of chairpersons, 10 chairpersons are appointed, nominated by the Speaker, so that if Speaker is absent, one of these panelists will preside over Lok Sabha. In the same fashion, Speaker Pro Tem is appointed and 3 other members are also appointed, so that in absence of the Speaker Pro Tem, these 3 other members, they will administer oath to the newly elected MPs. But then what this Minister for Parliamentary Affairs does, gets on a telephonic conversation with these 3 members and the person who is being chosen as the Speaker Pro Tem, conducts a telephonic conversation, basically getting their approval. Are you ready? Because we want you to be appointed as the Speaker Pro Tem. Are you ready? And once their approval is sought, then the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs will write to the President, will send a note to the President. Madam President, this is the Speaker Pro Tem we have selected. These are the 3 other members. We have to administer oath to them. But the President administers oath only to the Speaker Pro Tem. And then this Speaker Pro Tem will administer oath to these 3 other members. And then the Speaker Pro Tem, when he is present, will administer oath to the newly elected MPs. In his absence, the 3 other members, one of them will administer oath to the newly elected MPs. That is the job of the Speaker Pro Tem. And the other job, as I said, is to preside over the election of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, when the new Speaker is to be elected. But now there can be a question on your mind. Sir, if this Speaker Pro Tem, who is the senior most member of the Lok Sabha in terms of tenure, what if he wants to contest to the post of the Speaker as well? Is he allowed? Will he be allowed? What will happen in this case? Has it ever happened? It has. When? 14th Lok Sabha. The same person who was appointed as the Speaker Pro Tem, he also wanted to contest election to the post of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. In that case, what happened? In the 14th Lok Sabha, sometimes these facts are very important for your prelims exam. In the 14th Lok Sabha, 2 Speaker pro tem were appointed. Clear? These are the details that you have to keep in mind, can be extremely important for your civil services examination. Let's look at a question. Consider the following statements. A member appointed as Speaker pro tem of Lok Sabha cannot contest election to the post of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. We just discussed it can happen, it has happened in the 14th Lok Sabha. Second, only one Speaker pro tem can be appointed. We've discussed 14th Lok Sabha, 2 Speaker pro tem were appointed. A senior most member in terms of tenure in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha combined is appointed as the Speaker pro tem. No. Prior to 17th Lok Sabha, yes, this was the case. But not after that. Basically, we only look at the tenure in Lok Sabha to determine the seniority. The Speaker pro tem necessarily has to be from the ruling party or coalition. This is also something which is not mentioned anywhere. We have seen instances where the member of the opposition, the senior most member, has been appointed as the Speaker pro tem. So how many statements are correct? None of the statements are correct. And what is the controversy here? The controversy is that there is a Congress MP who has been an 8-time member. He has been overlooked. And instead, a BJP MP who is only a 7-time MP has been appointed as the Speaker pro tem. The opposition alleges that this is violation of convention. The opposition alleges that because that 8-time MP is a member of the Dalit community, that is why he has been overlooked. Basically, it's a political slugfest. But what you need to understand is the explanation given by the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, who says that the member belonging to the Congress party, Mr. Suresh, he was not continuously the member of the Lok Sabha, consecutively member of the parliament. So there were some broken terms as well. But otherwise, when we look at the MP who has been nominated as the pro tem speaker, appointed as the pro tem speaker, Mr. Mahtab, he has had a continuous 7-term in the parliament. That is why he has been appointed. Plus, in any case, it is an ad hoc post. Your primary job is to administer oath to the newly elected MPs and to preside over the election of the speaker. After that, you are not relevant when it comes to the speaker's post. That's what you need to understand from this topic. Before we jump to topic number 2, here is an important announcement. I'm told that this affordable price where you can get 15 months of UPSC CSE GS subscription at an affordable price of $24,999. This offer or this discount or this fee rebate ends today. Should you wish to enroll in these programs, if at all you need guidance, coaching, live classes to help you prepare for the examination, please consider this. Consider it today, because today seems to be the last day of this discounted course fee. Let's look at another topic. Kejriwal to remain in jail as High Court stays bail order of court. Now, this is something that we have discussed previously as well, but maybe a large number of students have joined us recently on this platform, on our YouTube channel. And after the prelims examination, more and more students have been watching our daily newspaper analysis. So I thought I will briefly recap this particular topic. Enforcement Directorate is investigating Aam Aadmi Party leaders under Prevention of Money Laundering Act. What is that case? Very briefly, excise policy case or a liquor policy case where the Delhi government, headed by Mr. Kejriwal as the Chief Minister and other ministers, together they decided to tweak the liquor policy in Delhi to favor the private members, to favor the private enterprises. Clear? And this is where it was alleged that money exchanged hands, there was an element of corruption, and that money, which is to the tune of 100 crore rupees, that money was used by this beneficiary called Aam Aadmi Party to campaign in the Goa elections. So what are you saying? What I'm saying is there is a case being investigated by Enforcement Directorate, which comes under the Department of Revenue, which is under the Ministry of Finance. It investigates cases involving the violation of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The case against Mr. Kejriwal, his Aam Aadmi Party, some of his colleagues is that you changed the Delhi liquor policy, excise policy, in exchange of bribe, and that bribe money, which is to the tune of 100 crore, you use that money to campaign in the Goa Legislative Assembly elections. We will not focus on what is the case against Mr. Manish Sisodia or other minister, Mr. Jain. Let's specifically focus on Mr. Kejriwal. The case against Mr. Kejriwal, the Enforcement Directorate has invoked something called vicarious liability. What is this vicarious liability? Where you are held accountable for the action of others. In a sense, maybe Mr. Kejriwal is directly not responsible for this policy, but since he is the chief minister under whose cabinet this decision was taken, that means if other ministers were responsible, you are also responsible because you are responsible for the acts of others. Similarly, who is the beneficiary in this case? Aam Aadmi Party as a political party. Mr. Kejriwal is the convener of this political party, is the head of this political party. So as the head of this political party, you are responsible for your political party. That is what we call vicarious liability. And Mr. Kejriwal was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate and sent to jail. Then just before Delhi was to vote in the Lok Sabha elections, the 7 seats in Delhi were about to vote in the Lok Sabha elections, Mr. Kejriwal approached the Supreme Court and asked for what is known as interim bail. Why not a regular bail? I'll tell you slightly later. But what he is asking for an interim bail. Why? Let me campaign in the elections. For that reason, leave me. For that reason, release me. And once the campaigning is over, once I've voted, I will come back to jail. In this interim period, please release me on bail. That's an interim bail. Supreme Court allowed it. Why Supreme Court allowed it? Supreme Court said that this particular gentleman, Mr. Kejriwal, is basically the Chief Minister of Delhi. Second, he is not a habitual offender. Third, the leader, habitual offender, that means he is not always committing crimes. He does not have the habit of committing offenses. He is the leader of a national political party. And at the same time, there is an intervening factor. What is the intervening factor? We are in the midst of 18th Lok Sabha election. And this 18th Lok Sabha election is one of the significant events. And that is why we can release Mr. Kejriwal on an interim bail. But once the campaigning is over, the voting is over, you have to come back to jail, which he did. But then Mr. Kejriwal applied for a regular bail. And in this case, the trial court granted bail, but then immediately the Enforcement Directorate approached the High Court. Approached the High Court saying, please don't release Mr. Kejriwal on bail. Why? Because the trial court has not performed the twin test. And since the trial court has not performed the twin test, Mr. Kejriwal should not have been given jail, should not have been given bail. And what is this twin test? Under Section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, this section states no courts can grant bail under this law. So bail is not possible. But then two exceptions have been provided. That means bail is not provided, bail is not allowed, but in two exceptional circumstances, bail can be provided. Just like we say, we have the freedom of speech and expression, but there are exceptions as well. This is not an absolute fundamental right. Exceptions are on the grounds of public order, morality, decency, so on and so forth. Your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted. Restrictions can be imposed on your freedom of speech and expression. Similarly, Section 45 of the PMLA says no court can grant bail under this law. But this is not absolute. That means in exceptional circumstances, bail can be granted. And what are these exceptional circumstances? That is what we call as the twin test. And what is this twin test? Two conditions have to be satisfied by the courts, by the judge. One, prima facie, at the face of it, the court has to satisfy itself that this accused is not guilty. Second, the accused will not commit any offense while on bail. That means when someone who is an accused under Prevention of Money Laundering Act is produced before the court will not grant bail, but can grant bail under two extremely exceptional circumstances. For that, what is called twin test. The court will have to grant bail only if these two tests are performed and satisfied. Test number one, the judge has to be satisfied that prima facie, by looking at this case, we think that you are not guilty. Second, we are satisfied that we don't think you will commit any offense while you are on bail. That is why bail under Prevention of Money Laundering Act is extremely difficult. Because normally this aspect number one, we come to know at the time of the judgment. What is that judgment? Because when does the court know whether you are guilty or not? When all the arguments have been completed and now the final arguments are to be put before the judge, when the judge is about to give his verdict, that's when the judge is satisfied whether you are guilty or innocent. That means what normally for other laws, other offenses, you have to satisfy at the end of the trial, here you have to satisfy it even before the trial. That you have to convince the judge, and the judge has to be satisfied that you are not guilty. And the judge has to satisfy himself or herself that you will not commit any offense once you are released on bail. Now, who is that judge who is going to take such a risk in granting bail? That is why bail is extremely difficult in PMLA cases. These are similar tests that are to be performed and satisfied, for example, under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, which also says there is no bail, but bail only in exceptional circumstances. Similarly, similar provisions under NDPS Act of 1985, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985, where there is no bail, but the bail is only there in exceptional circumstances if these two tests are performed. These provisions, or should we say Section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, it was challenged before the court in 2017 in a case known as Nikesh Tharachand Shah versus Union of India. And two judges of the Supreme Court, Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman and Justice Sanjay Krishan Kaul, declared that this Section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act is unconstitutional. Why unconstitutional? Because it violates Article 14 of the Constitution. But in 2017, listen to me carefully, when this section was declared unconstitutional by the two-judge bench of the Supreme Court, very next year, in 2018, do you know what is happening? Parliament is amending Prevention of Money Laundering Act to bring back Section 45 in its original form, that too via Finance Act. That means same provision which was struck down by the two-judge bench of the Supreme Court in 2017, same provision was brought back into this law by the Parliament in 2018, but this time how? Through a money bill, through budget, through Finance Act of 2018. Even this was challenged in the court in a case known as Vijay Dinanath Chauhan. Not Vijay Dinanath Chauhan, Vijay Madan Lal Chaudhary versus Union of India 2022. Those who did not get the joke can skip it, focus on the topic. In this 2022 judgment, a three-judge bench of the Supreme Court said, no, Section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act is constitutional. But in this 2022 judgment, one aspect was not decided. One aspect was left undecided. What was left undecided? Whether such changes to Prevention of Money Laundering Act can be brought via a money bill. Because the definition of the money bill is given under Article 110. Only those provisions which are there under Article 110 can be part of the money bill. In fact, we saw in case of Aadhaar as well. Aadhaar was also introduced as a money bill. We saw some service conditions of tribunal members. The service condition of some tribunal members, some tribunals were abolished. This was also done through money bill route. In fact, Congress politician who is in charge of the communications of the Congress party, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, approached the court and challenged the introduction of Aadhaar as a money bill. That petition, along with this petition, whether the changes to PMLA could have been brought through money bill route, that petition, this petition where service conditions of some tribunal members were changed due to the money bill, all this is pending before the court. For that, a bench, a constitution bench, has not been set up yet. But then there is a condition called statutory bail. What is the statutory bail? Default bail. Normally you applied for bail and then the court will have to go through the merits of this case and decide whether we will grant you bail or not. In some cases there is a default bail, statutory bail. When half of the term is served. For example, and this is how Sharjeel Imam was granted bail, statutory bail under Criminal Procedure Code. And what is that statutory bail? Under Prevention of Money Laundering Act, maximum punishment is 7 years. But if you are accused of money laundering involving drugs, involving narcotics and psychotropic substances, through that you are committing money laundering, then the maximum punishment is 10 years. Now imagine you have been arrested under PMLA. It's very difficult to satisfy the twin test under Section 45 to be given the bail. But in one circumstance, you will be automatically granted bail. What is that circumstance? That's what we call statutory bail. What is that statutory bail? If the maximum punishment is 7 years and you have served 3.5 years inside the jail, but even now the police has not completed the investigation, the charge sheet has not been filed, or the trial is going on, in this case you have a default option of bail, statutory bail, you will be granted bail. Similarly, if you're accused under PMLA, but in this case you are involved in drugs as well, for which the maximum punishment is 10 years. If you have served 5 years in jail By serving 5 years in jail, you have completed half of the maximum sentence, you are entitled for statutory bail. Long story short, what is this article all about? Mr. Kejriwal was granted bail by the trial court. But then ED challenged this bail order before the High Court. And under Section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, it is necessary for the High Court to hear Enforcement Directorate. Necessary. If the Enforcement Directorate refuses, does not agree with the bail, then the court has to prescribe twin test, which Enforcement Directorate says the trial court did not fulfill in granting bail to Mr. Kejriwal. And now for a few days, this trial court's order of granting bail to Mr. Kejriwal has been put on hold. And that is what the lawyer for Mr. Kejriwal, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, is arguing, that putting this on hold means you're denying the bail. But let's see what the court will have to say on this matter in the coming days. This is how you need to understand this particular topic. Clear? Now let's look at another interesting editorial called The New Cold War. Listen to me carefully. Here we have Russia and we have North Korea. What Russia and North Korea have decided? They have decided to enter into a security pact. What will happen because of this security pact? Both of them are promising mutual assistance in the event of aggression. Long story short, if somebody is committing aggression against North Korea, Russia will assist North Korea. This editorial says, gives us the same sense of what would happen during the earlier Cold War between USSR and United States of America. Because after the Second World War, the world emerged bipolar. Two superpowers emerged, USSR and United States. And then a large number of countries decided to ally, be part of an alliance, or be part of either of the two groupings. That's what we call two big blocks were created. And the rationale was same. Those countries supporting United States, if the countries who are supporting USSR will instigate, commit aggression against these countries, United States will assist those countries. So an aggression on one means aggression on all of us. That is what the logic of the Cold War was. And this Hindu editorial says, this treaty, this security pact between Russia and North Korea, where both the countries are pledging to each other that we will mutually assist each other in times of, or in the event of aggression, this gives us the same sense, or these are the echoes of those period, those years of the Cold War. Clear? But something else. Both these countries, Russia and North Korea, they have been facing sanctions along with Iran. And you would know all these three countries, they come under CAATSA. What is CAATSA? Countering America's Adversaries through Sanctions Act. Countering America's adversaries, basically enemies, through Sanctions Act. Whoever is an adversary of United States and whichever country conducts transactions of significant nature with these adversaries, United States will impose sanctions on these countries. And who are these adversaries of United States? Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Russia has been facing sanctions primarily after Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, and then when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, this is when Russia has been facing sanctions from the West and United States. North Korea has been facing sanctions because it is alleged that North Korea is developing nuclear weapons. And the similar allegation is against Iran as well. Iran is also developing nuclear weapons, and that is why they are under the sanctions regime of the United States called CAATSA. But when we look at it this way, Russia and North Korea, they were once good friends. Then they drifted apart. In fact, Russia has also voted against North Korea in United Nations Security Council. So their relationship, which was at its peak at one point in time, started getting deteriorated, and now it is again finding its feet, thanks to these sanctions by the West. That is why India and some other countries also have been saying that because of these sanctions on Russia, Russia has been pushed into the lap of China. Now something interesting has happened, and something interesting is happening. China, which has an expansionist ideology, wants to expand its territory. China is now favoring countries even more, such as Russia, such as North Korea, such as Iran, and it wants to expand its influence in the neighborhood. Not just in Middle East, by allying with Syria or China or Iran, but also in the South China Sea. Similarly, Russia has its own problems with Japan. For example, look at this island, group of Kuril Islands. This is a disputed island between Russia and Japan. And because Russia has now entered into a security pact with North Korea, her relations, Russian relations with South Korea will get affected. Identify these countries. Just because Russia became closer, signed a security pact with North Korea, its relationship with South Korea will get affected, because North and South Korea, they are still in a state of war. Which is the other country with which Russia has a problem? Japan. And all these countries, both these countries, they are closer to United States of America. So now new power blocks are emerging. One led by China, the other led by United States. And United States, through its activities in the South China Sea, by which United States is trying to court India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, basically as a front against China. But that's not the only case. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited North Korea, which was his first visit in 24 years. In May this year, Vladimir Putin became the president of Russia for a fifth term. And he visited China for the 19th time. What am I trying to convey here? Russia and North Korea, they were once friends, but then they drifted apart. In fact, Russia voted against North Korea in the United Nations Security Council. But now, thanks to United States and the sanctions imposed by United States, both these countries have gotten together with each other. Similarly, Russia and China. In fact, if you can recall, or if you know this, Mao Zedong, when he went on a visit to Russia to meet Stalin, the undisputed leader of Russia, he was made to wait for many weeks before he could get appointment with Mr. Stalin. He was made to reside at a dilapidated house, where the only recreational item can be thought of a broken table tennis table. Sir, what are you saying? I am saying both Russia as well as China, they were not initially friends, because both wanted to command those countries who were part of the communist regimes. They wanted the leadership of the communist states. And when Mao Zedong went to meet Stalin in Russia, in Moscow, he was made to wait for weeks. He was put up in a hotel or in a room where there was nothing recreational. The only recreational thing could be said that of a broken TT table. And then both the countries, they also fought a war very briefly in 1969. But then Mao Zedong, he died in 1976. Then slowly and steadily the relationship started getting better and better and better. But then came the high point in 1991 when USSR collapsed. Dismembership of the USSR took place. So various USS entities which were part of USSR, they liberated themselves. That was also the end of the Cold War, because now there is no USSR. This entity has split into multiple independent sovereign countries. And after that, the relationship between Russia and China enhanced. China became the biggest Asian investor in Russia. Russia became the biggest supplier of raw material to China. So it was a beautiful symbiotic relationship between the two countries. And in the year 2022, both the countries signed no limits strategic partnership. Which are these two countries? We are talking about Russia and China. Both the countries signed no limit strategic partnership, and within weeks, within days, Russia invaded Ukraine. Since then, China has been accused of supplying dual-use weapons or technology to Russia. What are the allegations against China? That you are supplying lorries, you are supplying earth drillers or excavators. Then what is the logic? What is the point? Dual-use weapons. For example, there is a knife. Knife can be used for dual use. Either to apply butter on a bread or also kill you. Similarly, China is accused of supplying dual-use technology and weapons to Russia, and which Russia is using in its war against Ukraine. For example, lorries. You might say lorries are harmless, but these lorries have been used by Russia to ferry troops to Ukraine by Russia. Excavators. These excavators have been used by Russia to dig trenches, which is helping them in its war against Ukraine. So dual-use technology, dual-use weapons have been alleged to have been supplied by China to Russia. And then a couple of weeks earlier, I think 4-5 weeks earlier, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited France, wherein he met the leaders of the European Commission as well. There he promised that we will not supply weapons and we will put a hold on the supply of this dual-use technology to Russia. So the West expects that we will put pressure on China and China will put pressure on Russia so that this war on Ukraine is over. But now Russia is in a very good shape to almost win this war in Ukraine. What will happen in this case to India? There was a time when Russia was a dominant partner in its relationship with China. What if the situation reverses and China becomes a major player and Russia becomes a minor player in this relationship? 60 to 70% of our military equipments, they are imported from Russia. What happens if there is a war between India and China? Who will be favored by Russia? If the Russia is a junior partner of China, how will they favor us as against the Chinese? And what if there is a two-front war, Pakistan and China against India? That is why we have to take steps. Our diplomacy has to be at its peak because we need to prevent the emergence of new Cold War. The old Cold War was between USSR and United States. Now the new Cold War is between West, led by United States, and the assertive China. That will have enough ramifications on India as well. And that is why all these developments taking place, whether it's a security pact between Russia and North Korea, let's not forget North Korea is a totalitarian regime. All these countries, whether it is Russia, whether it is North Korea, whether it is China, they have something in common. They're all dictatorship regimes or family enterprises, or they are non-democratic entities. Perhaps it is time that the democratic countries, they need to come together, such as South Korea, such as Australia, such as India, such as United States, and to prevent the march of China in the neighborhood. Because China is an expansionist country. That's why this question is on your screen. Is the world headed for a new Cold War? Discuss its implications on India's energy security. Write an answer to this question in the comment section and let other students evaluate. You should evaluate your each other's answers. That's how you can write better answers. Let's look at another editorial, testing times. Indeed, these are testing times, and you should consider yourself lucky that you're preparing for an exam which is conducted by one of the most respectable institutions in India, which is UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. You will never hear about a paper leak when it comes to a UPSC exam. You will never hear allegations of corruption against the UPSC, favoritism. But look at what is happening with National Testing Agency, which is a society registered under the Societies Registration Act of 1860. It's a society. It conducts examination. One examination it conducted was NEET UG. And there were massive allegations of either corruption or paper leak or inefficiency. Closed more than 80, sometimes I think 84 or 85 were All India rank 1. All of them got 720 out of 720. In fact, 6 students got All India rank 1 who were part of the same center in Haryana. Miracle. There is also an allegation that grace marks were provided. How these grace marks were provided, there is no rationale. And now there is also an allegation that maybe the paper was leaked. Matter went to the court. The court was asked, can you please stay the counseling? The court said no. So on NEET, we see a completely different picture. But then another exam conducted by the same agency, NTA, called UGC NET. Ironically, NTA gave a statement that we successfully conducted UGC NET examination, and then within few days, within next day, the Ministry of Education cancelled this examination, ordered a CBI investigation. So if the allegation is against the NTA, shouldn't NEET UG exam also come under the scanner? But be that as it may, it has larger implications as well. There are some states which are saying that the entire examination structure has been centralized. There are states such as Tamil Nadu which have been protesting so many times that we want to come out of NEET UG. We want to conduct our own examination. Shouldn't the states in a federal setup such as India be allowed and empowered to carry out their own examinations? Why should every examination system be centralized? Not my words, the words of this editorial. And the editorial further says that yes, some element of all India exams would always be there, but the states and center, they have to come together to ensure that the sanctity of this institution is maintained. And for that, what we primarily need, we may need that first, some action should be taken against those officials who are responsible for managing this agency. Some heads have to roll because you have to fix accountability. There has to be accountability. There has to be transparency. Transparency in the sense, sunlight is the biggest disinfectant. Transparent. Accept the flaws. Accept the mistakes that you have committed. Only then you can rebuild the trust that people can repose in you. There has to be transparency. What this editorial says, what was the need to conduct UGC NET examination in offline mode while it was conducted in online mode? Because in offline mode there is more chances of paper leak. There is more chance of unfair means, because the invigilators in an offline mode may help some of the candidates. What was the need? Be transparent and explain why. Then heads have to roll. Those who are part of this agency responsible for carrying out this examination, they must be made accountable, and then fair investigation should take place. And consult the states. Consult the states so that some of the examinations can be decentralized. States can carry out these exams on their own, while some all India exams have to be there. But for that we need trust in this national testing agency. So for this national testing agency, these are the testing times. Let's look at the question. Which of the following is or are the functions of the National Testing Agency? First, to identify partner institutions with adequate infrastructure from the existing schools and higher education institutions, which would facilitate conduct of online examinations without adversely impacting their academic routine. NTA, which I said, is a registered society under the Societies Registration Act 1860. What is its function? Its function is to identify those institutions, maybe schools, maybe colleges, maybe entities who can conduct and facilitate online exams. This statement is correct. To create a question bank for all subjects using the modern techniques. Yes or no? This is also the correct statement. To establish a strong R&D culture, research and development culture, as well as a pool of experts in different aspects of testing. This is also the correct statement. This is also the function. To undertake any other exam that is entrusted to it by the ministries, departments of the Government of India or state government. So you have to be absolutely clear. Although it's a national testing agency, but it can conduct those exams which are entrusted to it by the state governments as well. So D, all of the above is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at some of the prelims based questions. Ministry of External Affairs, it says Gupta has not requested consular help. Who is this Gupta? Mr. Nikhil Gupta, a businessman who was arrested in Czech Republic. Why? Because he's accused of plotting assassination of Mr. Panun, who is considered to be a Khalistani separatist or a Khalistani sympathizer, but at the same time is a US citizen. So one businessman of India accused of plotting assassination of a US citizen, Mr. Panun, who is a Khalistani sympathizer or a terrorist. He was arrested in Czech, extradited this month to United States of America. And for this, you need to understand what is the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. There is one called Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations. (1961). Again, we were discussing Russia, United States, Cold War. This convention is the product of the Cold War. So those diplomats of countries which were part of the US bloc, they would be attacked by those countries who are part of the communist Soviet bloc, and vice versa. And how do we allow these foreign diplomats to work in the host country without any threat, without any favor, without the threat of reprisals? That is why this Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations was signed in the year 1961. But then we have Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. What is this consular relation? Listen to me carefully. The right of each country to assist its citizens abroad is a basic principle of international law and diplomacy. The Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, it's a multilateral treaty that codifies consular rights. What are these consular rights? I'll tell you slightly later. This treaty makes it possible for a country to assist its nationals abroad while respecting the sovereignty of other nations, which basically means if there is a citizen of India who has been in prison or detained or arrested in United States of America, United States has an obligation. You have to inform India. And India has a right to seek meeting with that individual so that India can provide for legal assistance. That is the whole purpose of Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. Some more facts, because this is prelims focus. This convention was adopted in 1963 and it entered into force in 1967, which basically means if Mr. Nikhil Gupta seeks consular access, the consular officers of India in United States, they have the right to meet him, to talk to him, to provide him legal assistance. And whenever any individual is arrested, any Indian is arrested in Germany, for example, Germany has to inform without delay to India. If a citizen of a foreign country is arrested or committed to prison or custody or is detained in any other manner, the consular post of the country is to be informed of the same without delay. That is Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. Let's look at another item for prelims. Act punishing organized cheating comes into effect. What is this law? This law is known as the Public Examinations Prevention of Unfair Means Act of 2024. All the offences under this act are non-bailable, cognizable, and non-compoundable. That is fact number one that you have to keep in mind. What is this law? The Public Examinations Prevention of Unfair Means Act. What are these unfair means? Cheating in the examination. What are unfair means? Paper leak. What if there is an individual who is providing answers to the candidates writing the answer? That comes under this law. What if there is an individual who is not supposed to be there at the exam center but is there in the exam center because he or she is helping these candidates? That person comes under this law. There is a vendor. Who is the vendor? An entity which is organizing this exam, for example. An entity which is responsible for printing OMR sheets, for example. An entity which is responsible for printing question papers, for example. If they also indulge in unfair means, cheating, paper leak, they come under the ambit of this law. If the invigilator is opening the question paper before time, it is a punishable offense. If you are carrying out OMR sheets, that is also a punishable offense. So all these offenses are covered under the Public Examinations Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024. And all these offenses are non-bailable. That means bail will not be given. But in exceptional circumstances, bail will be given. Cognizable, that means the police officer can arrest you without the warrant by the magistrate. That means the police officer can investigate without the order by the magistrate. And these offenses are non-compoundable as well. What is non-compoundable? I defamed you or you defamed me. Matter went to the court. After that we shake hands. Okay, I forgive you, you forgive me. This offense is compoundable. That means we can withdraw it. Similarly, cheating. You have cheated me of some money. It's a compoundable offense. Adultery used to be a compoundable offense. But all the offenses under this act, these are non-bailable, cognizable, and non-compoundable. That means investigation will continue, punishment will be given. There is no question of compounding these charges. And then there is a penalty. What is the penalty? If you are accused under this law and you have been convicted under this law, punishment is not less than 3 years up to 5 years, which means the offenses are serious offenses. These are not petty offenses, these are serious offenses. Fine up to 10 lakh rupees fine can also be imposed. But so far as this vendor is concerned, this is penalty if as an individual you are resorting to unfair means. If the invigilator is resorting to unfair means, if outsider is resorting to unfair means and assisting you in cheating in this exam, all these individuals can be put to jail for a minimum period of 3 years up to a maximum of 5 years, and 10 lakh fine can also be imposed. But those vendors who are responsible for, let's say, printing the question booklets, carrying out online examinations, printing the OMR sheets, if you are found guilty, for 4 years you will be banned from performing such acts again, basically performing these duties again, or participating in conducting these examinations again. And punishment can also be up to 1 crore rupees for such vendors. That's what this headline talks about. The law has provision for up to 5 years imprisonment and a fine of up to 1 crore for exam malpractices. But the UGC NET exam, which was cancelled on June 19, will not be covered by the new legislation because this new law entered into force on June 21. And you would know all these laws will have prospective effect, not retrospective effect. Let's look at the question. Which of the following statements regarding the Public Examinations Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024 are correct? All offences under this act are non-bailable, non-compoundable and cognizable. Correct? The maximum punishment under this act is a jail term of 5 years and a fine of 10 lakh rupees. Some of you may be confused with and. Why? Because sometimes, in most cases, it is either a jail term or a fine or both. But for this, the language is such, for this law, the language is such that it says jail term of up to 5 years and a fine of 10 lakh rupees. So both these statements are correct. C is the right answer. That is it that we had to cover today in the Hindu newspaper analysis. We covered all these important topics one by one. If this session has been of some help to you, please let me know in the comment section. And before I end, I'll make this announcement again. I'm told today is the last day of this rebate in the course fee. Should you wish to enroll in this program, You can be part of the online classroom program. We have an Achievers batch which is coming up, purely in English medium. I will start this batch on the June 25. We'll start with Indian polity. Should you wish to enroll in this program, reach out to us by calling on this number. And if you wish to enroll now, enroll today, because I'm told today is the last day of this discounted course fee. Thank you so much for staying with me. See you again today at 2 p.m. We will discuss the landmark case in the history of independent India, Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, 1973. And we will understand what is this doctrine of basic structure. And we'll again see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, with another edition of the Hindu newspaper analysis. Thank you for watching. All the best. Stay safe. Bye-bye.